So as an entrepreneur, how would Cabal help me in terms of finding information, advisory services? Because part of the problem sometimes is there's a lot of information. So how is it curated for the entrepreneur to, to use as a source of
So for instance,
info?
I mean, our daily digest, which you can subscribe to on the website, techabal.com, comes out 5 days a week. It comes out at 7 a.m. West African time every day. And it is a summary of everything that's happened in technology that matters on the continent. It's a quick read. We don't put in anything that doesn't need to be in there. If it's boring, if it doesn't matter, if it's repetitive because we've been shouting about it for too long, we put it out. We don't put it in that newsletter. That newsletter is a 10-minute read every morning that lets you know this is what's happening and this is what matters. And so that's that's a super useful resource to start a day with on a regular basis. And if we haven't touched it, then probably doesn't matter.
So let's go to commerce, e-commerce. And when people talk about e-commerce in Nigeria, they only talk about two people, Jumia or Konga. But I think it's a bit more than that.
Yeah.
I think, for example, it would be interesting to know how much commerce goes in Instagram, for example, where actually, when I think about it, there's more trust there. I think people pay before they get the stuff.
Yeah.
Now, when we look at the others, like Jumia and Kongas, you have cases where they have this cash on delivery. Pay on delivery. I mean, so what's your sense of that industry in terms of how big is this e-commerce if we add everybody else that is actually all the small businesses that are actually starting their business?
Yeah. And living on Instagram, living on WhatsApp.
Living on WhatsApp. So nobody's saying, okay, I'm going to start a business and first thing I want to look for is a house to do. They start from wherever they're living. And that's part of that e-commerce ecosystem. How do we get a sense of the total value and what percentage, for example, a Jumia commands?
I think it's a really difficult space to quantify, especially something like WhatsApp. Actually, between WhatsApp and Instagram, which are probably the two most important e-commerce channels in existence at the moment. The problem is that they're one-to-one transactional platforms, and so there is no kind of public view of how much is actually happening on there. I think they are super important. I think for any entrepreneur starting out and looking to do commerce, you can't ignore those platforms. And that's everything from whether you're selling women's shoes to children's clothes to the carpenter who's going to come and build shelves in your office. Every one of them is using these platforms in some way or the other. So I think they're effective tools on that end, but from the perspective of quantifying an industry, they're quite difficult, and I wouldn't even be able to hazard a guess or come up with a methodology for doing that while we're on this. But it certainly is an important space, and there's a lot happening in there. I think probably the most interesting thing about those is their effect on people's abilities to build big or significant companies. And I think they're a facilitator for the people selling and buying. But as with a lot of social media, they have taken a lot of value out of the formalized space for people. And so they're effective platforms for people to use, but not necessarily effective platforms for, they compete with Jumia, they compete with Konga, and they compete in ways that those businesses aren't necessarily able to to challenge, really.
So that begs the question. So you have an Amazon where people see it as an efficient platform to sell their goods versus start their own platform or try to create awareness on those social media platforms. And I guess that's because you can tie that to a better infrastructure. But when we come here, we're seeing a trend where, like I said, people are actually doing it themselves than going to Jumia or Konga. Does that create any concern about the viability of that type of platform in Nigeria and what is needed for more people to say, you know what, Instagram is great, but I want to reach a bigger network, which is exactly what those big platforms should be all about?
There are a number of challenges to doing business, and this is not a Nigeria thing, it's an Africa thing, which is, core challenges, payments, logistics. Like delivery logistics, I think, are a much bigger issue than payment. Trust is a big issue.
We trust, yes.
Availability of inventory. These are all sort of big issues, and it's like how much inventory do you want to hold versus how much. The marketplace model works really well for Amazon in the US because there's an endless array of people selling through Amazon with a really big depth of sort of product, and Amazon's logistics fulfillment is so effective that it's better than the alternative.
Yes.
In Nigeria, what we are talking about when we talk about commerce through WhatsApp or Instagram is still fairly small scale,
yeah,
and it's still fairly limited because you have to use your logistics fulfillment is still, you then have to figure out, you've bought the socks from me, now I have to get the socks to you. Whereas if I do it via an Amazon, I know that the logistics are sorted, and Amazon's logistics are better than anything that I could possibly come up with.
Of course.
The challenge that your e-commerce companies in Africa need to get up to is they need to get to a place where, from a trust, from an effectiveness, from a cost to them versus what it is that they can charge perspective, they need to be so good that there's no other fulfillment network that anyone would use beyond theirs. And that's a big challenge. It's not a problem they're going to solve today. It's a long-term challenge that they've got to keep improving and keep working on.
So what's your definition of trust? Is trust the fact that people get used to using technology and comfortable with it and know that if anything goes wrong, they have consumer protection right? Or is trust just the fact that this is, yeah?
It's all of that.
Yes.
It's that it works. It's that I won't lose my money. It's that they will deliver the thing that they said they would deliver when they said they would deliver it and in the condition that I expect it. It's all of these things are combined. So you need all of them.
So do you think
it's comfort?
So
yes,
it's
right.
comfort. So do you think that as we see a generational shift, because I don't think my kids understands what trust is. As fact that as long as they can download it from an app store, for example, and this is how I was born into the fact that you order and you get paid, and it doesn't go wrong all the time. So it's automatic for them. While for our generation, it's a case of okay.
So it's interesting because for your kids' generation, they have a more savvy understanding of trust.
Yes.
And it means that they are able to tell what they should trust and what they shouldn't trust.
So, for example, so they trust data. I do trust data. They don't trust the guy behind it. Why we would say, Tomiwa, that guy set up that business, there must be something wrong. So they have a bias, human bias. Why, which we don't see in the next generation.
Yeah, I think, yes, they're used to the internet mediating trust. And so if you're used to Instagram, you have a sense of how to determine that an Instagram account is backed by a real person or is not spoofing you. The longer you've been exposed to the internet, then the more native you are in the internet, the more savvy you are about figuring out actually this one is a fake and that one is real. Similarly, in terms of buying and selling, they understand how to make a purchase on WhatsApp and protect themselves. At what points do you transfer money? Who can you trust and who can't you trust? And I think there's a generation that's being born native to the internet, has grown up with the internet as a de facto tool of commerce and of engagement and social behavior. And yeah, they're more trusting than we are, but they're more trusting of technology than the older generations. But even within that generation, they also have standards for what it is that they can trust. And what it means is that, they might trust a purchase via Instagram or trust a purchase via WhatsApp, but not necessarily trust a purchase via a big web platform if they've been disappointed by that platform before.